The hospital was cold, and the sterile scent of antiseptic burned my nostrils as I paced the hallway. My son, Liam, was in critical condition after the accident, and I couldn't stop shaking. It wasn't just fear, it was panic. Every time I thought of the accident, a fresh wave of anger surged through me. How could something so reckless happen to my boy? I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and dialed Clara's number. She hadn't picked up the first few times. I assumed she was still in traffic, maybe busy at work, but now, I needed to hear her voice. I needed her here. The call rang once, twice, 3 times before a deep, unfamiliar voice answered. Hello? The man's voice was casual, too calm for my taste. A chuckle in his tone like he was sitting on a couch, maybe sipping on something warm. My stomach twisted. Who is this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, afraid to hear the truth. I didn't want to believe what I was fearing. It's Greg, the voice replied, clearly unbothered by the question, like he was used to picking up phones for people. Is this Marcus? I felt a lump form in my throat. Where's Clara? Clara? He repeated, as if he needed a moment to place her name. She's not here right now, but I can pass along a message. Why the hell are you answering her phone? I demanded, my chest tightening. The world suddenly seemed so far away, as if I wasn't even in my body. My son was fighting for his life, and Clara, my wife, was... What? Who was this man? What was happening? There was a silence on the other end, and then Greg's voice came again, slower this time. Look, man, I don't know what's going on here, but if you're her husband, maybe you should... Just put her on the damn phone, I interrupted, my pulse pounding in my ears. The air in the hallway grew thick. I felt like I was suffocating, and I hadn't even seen Clara yet. My fingers dug into the phone, hoping this was some sort of mistake. But then she finally picked up. Marcus? Her voice was soft, almost too soft, as though she were trying to hide something. What's going on? I closed my eyes, fighting back the tears, trying to keep my voice steady. Why is some guy answering your phone? There was a pause. Too long of a pause. And then she spoke, her voice even quieter. It's not what you think, Marcus. He's just a friend. Just a friend? The words burned like acid in my throat. Clara, you've got to be kidding me. I'm sitting here in a hospital hallway waiting for news about our son Clara, and you're with some other guy? Are you seriously telling me that? I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line, and for a moment, all I could hear was the thumping of my heart. I was waiting for her to deny it, waiting for her to tell me this was some mistake, that this was all just a misunderstanding, but it didn't come. I didn't mean for it to happen, Marcus. I didn't, she stammered, but the words fell flat. I felt like I was listening to someone I didn't recognize, someone who was no longer my wife. Her voice was hollow, emotionless, as if she were too numb to care. The anger swelled in me, growing into something uncontrollable. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, my nails digging into my palms, but it didn't help. What the hell is wrong with you? I shouted, the words tearing out of me before I could stop them. Our son is in critical condition, and you're out there with him? With him? This is where you are, Clara. This is how you show up for me, for us. She didn't say anything for a long time, and when she finally spoke, her voice was barely audible. I'm coming to the hospital now, Marcus. Please don't do this. Let me explain. The rage bubbled up, sharp and raw, and before I could think, I ended the call. My phone slipped from my hands, and for a moment, I didn't even know what I was feeling. All I could think of was Liam, lying there in a sterile hospital bed, and my wife, with some man while our son's life hung in the balance. I trembled, staring at the walls as the sound of Liam's steady, mechanical heart monitor played in the background. Everything around me felt like it was falling apart, and in that moment, it didn't just feel like my world was tilting. It felt like everything I had ever known was shattering. I just didn't know how much worse it could get. I was pacing the lobby when Clara arrived, her face pale and eyes wide with uncertainty. She looked like she had been crying, though I couldn't be sure. My anger flared at the sight of her. It felt as if everything inside me, everything I had ever built with her, was about to unravel. Marcus? She breathed my name softly, cautiously, like she wasn't sure if I was going to yell or run. Maybe she didn't even know what to expect. The moment she stepped through the door, I couldn't hold back anymore. I rushed toward her, my voice sharp and trembling with a rage I couldn't control. How could you do this, Clara? My words hit her like a slap. She flinched, her hands instinctively raising as if to shield herself from the onslaught of accusations. "Do what?" she asked, her voice shaking. "What are you talking about? You know damn well what I'm talking about." My voice grew louder, even though I knew Liam was upstairs, fighting for his life, needing us both to be together, strong. "I called you, Clara. I called you, and some guy picks up. A guy! What the hell is going on?" Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might say something, anything that would make this all make sense. But instead, she just stood there, her eyes flickering with what I could only describe as discomfort. "Marcus, I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Greg he's a friend," she stammered, the words falling out as if she were trying to convince herself more than me. "Greg? A friend?" I scoffed, stepping back and shaking my head in disbelief. "Clara, don't lie to me. Don't lie to my face while our son is lying upstairs, barely clinging to life. You're out here with him, and you call him a friend?" Her gaze dropped to the floor. "I didn't," she started, but I couldn't listen to her excuses anymore. "You didn't mean for me to find out? That's what you're going with?" I bit the words out, my chest tight. I was trembling with anger and helplessness. I wanted to shout at her, to make her feel what I was feeling, but instead, it all came out in harsh, clipped sentences. "How long has this been going on, Clara? How long have you been seeing him?" She hesitated for a moment, her eyes flicking toward the ground. "Marcus, please." She reached for me, but I pulled away, stepping back out of her grasp. "Answer me, Clara," I demanded, my voice cold, dead even. "How long?" I don't know, okay?" she admitted, her voice small. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just happened. You weren't around, Marcus. You were always working, always gone." She swallowed hard, and I could see the guilt in her eyes, but it was overshadowed by something else, something I hadn't expected. Defensiveness. "You were never home. You never paid attention to me anymore. You were never here for us." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. "So that's it?" I said, my voice trembling with disbelief. "You couldn't handle it anymore? So you turned to another man? While I'm working my ass off to give you everything I can, you—" "Don't you dare," she interrupted, her voice growing sharper. "Don't you dare act like you were some perfect husband. You think I didn't notice? You think I didn't feel alone?" I took a step back, my heart pounding. I couldn't breathe. This wasn't the woman I married. This wasn't the woman I had built a life with. How could she shift the blame onto me like that? How could she just ignore everything I'd done, everything we had built together? "I was doing this for us, Clara." My voice cracked, and I felt a tear sting the corner of my eye. But I wouldn't let it fall. I wouldn't let her see how much she had broken me. "For our family. And you just decided to throw it all away. You threw me away." She stared at me, her face unreadable. But then, as if something finally cracked inside her, she spoke again, her voice quieter. "I never meant for it to be like this, Marcus. But it was just too much. The distance. The silence between us. I don't know what happened anymore. We were never really a family anymore, were we? I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. This was it. The moment I realized she had already emotionally checked out, even before this affair began, her words were like glass breaking, shattering the illusion that I had held onto for so long. There was nothing left to save. "You're right," I whispered, my throat tight. "We haven't been a family for a long time." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. "But I'm the one who's been fighting for us, and you've been slipping away, making excuses." Clara didn't say anything. She just stood there, her expression hollow, empty. And I realized in that moment that I was standing across from a stranger. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I had spent years of my life with, was gone. And she wasn't coming back. "Where is he, Clara?" I asked, my voice low, defeated. "Where is Greg?" But she didn't answer. The quiet beeping of the machines was the only sound in Liam's hospital room. His tiny, fragile body was surrounded by tubes and monitors, each one tracking his heartbeat and breathing. I could barely keep my eyes open as I sat by his side, my hand wrapped gently around his small fingers. He was so still, so peaceful, despite everything that had happened. But I couldn't shake the feeling that our world was crumbling. I wasn't alone for long. Clara stepped through the door, her face pale, her eyes red. She didn't look like she had been crying, but I knew better. She was always good at hiding things. She didn't come to my side, didn't reach out to touch Liam or comfort me. Instead, she stood at the foot of the bed, her arms folded tightly across her chest. For a moment, we just stared at each other, the silence between us thick with things unsaid. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, my voice sharp. "How could you do this, Clara?" The words felt foreign coming out of my mouth, like they didn't belong to me. But I had to say them. I had to make her see. She shifted uncomfortably, but didn't answer immediately. I made a mistake, Marcus," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She finally moved closer to the bed, but it felt like there was a chasm between us that couldn't be crossed. "A mistake?" I echoed, my voice rising. "This isn't just some little slip-up, Clara. You're with another man, while our son is lying here, fighting for his life, and you call it a mistake?" My chest tightened as I fought to keep my anger from spiraling out of control. "Do you even care what you've done?" Clara's eyes flickered to the floor, but she didn't seem particularly remorseful. She was trying to hold herself together, but I could see the cracks in her facade. "I didn't want it to happen," she said quietly, like that was supposed to make everything better. "It was just, I don't know, Marcus. I've been so lonely. I've been feeling so neglected and She trailed off as if searching for the right words, but nothing seemed to come out the way it should. "Lonely?" I repeated, stunned by her audacity. "You think that gives you the right to just betray me? To betray us? We've been through everything together, Clara. We built this family. And now you're telling me you couldn't talk to me, you couldn't tell me how you were feeling, you just had to—" I stopped myself, shaking my head. "This is not how I imagined this would go. This isn't the life I signed up for." She looked at me then, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't even sadness. It was something else. "I didn't know what else to do, Marcus," she said softly. "You were always gone, always at work, and when you were home, you weren't really here. I tried to reach out. I tried to make it work, but it wasn't enough. You didn't see me." I stepped back, my mind reeling. The words she was saying didn't make sense. "I didn't see you?" I repeated, the hurt creeping into my voice despite my best efforts. "What the hell do you think I've been doing, Clara? I worked every damn day to make sure you and Liam had everything you needed. I gave you everything I had, and you think I didn't see you?" She didn't respond. She didn't even look at me. She just stared at Liam, her gaze unfocused, distant. "I made a mistake," she said again, more firmly this time, but there was no real weight behind her words, no real apology. It didn't mean anything. It wasn't like what we had was... It wasn't like it was over. It was just... "Stop," I interrupted, my voice cold and steady. "Just stop. I don't want to hear any more of this. You can't just sweep this under the rug, Clara. You've already destroyed everything." She blinked at me, her eyes wide. "You don't understand. I didn't mean to..." "No," I cut in again, my voice barely above a whisper. "You didn't mean to? That's what you're going to say?" The pain cut through me like a knife. "You did this, Clara. You let this happen. And I'm the one who has to pay for it." The silence between us was deafening. I could feel the weight of her guilt hanging in the air, but she wouldn't acknowledge it. She wouldn't face what she had done. Instead, she kept trying to make excuses, trying to justify the unjustifiable. And I knew, in that moment, that there was nothing left for us. I glanced back down at Liam, his small, fragile form lying so still on the bed. He was all that mattered now. He was the only thing that was real, that was worth fighting for. But Clara, I didn't know her anymore. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a family with, was gone. And in her place stood someone I didn't recognize. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. "I can't do this, Clara," I whispered, more to myself than to her. But she heard me, and in that moment, I saw the smallest flicker of something. Regret? Remorse? I didn't know. It didn't matter. I couldn't fix this. I couldn't fix her. I had been trying for too long, and I had nothing left to give. For the first time in what felt like forever, I felt truly, completely alone. The sterile fluorescent lights in the waiting room flickered, casting a cold, harsh glow on everything in the room. Liam was finally stable, at least for now. He was in a room nearby, being monitored by machines that beeped rhythmically. But there was no peace for me, no calm. I couldn't get Clara out of my mind. My thoughts circled back to her, to the betrayal, to the way she had casually justified her affair, as if it was just another mistake. I didn't know how to feel anymore. Anger, grief, confusion, they all tangled together, leaving me dizzy with exhaustion. Clara sat across from me, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her jacket. She kept glancing at me, but whenever I looked up, her eyes quickly shifted away. She didn't say anything for a long time, and neither did I. But the silence between us was suffocating, more oppressive than any argument could ever be. Finally, Clara broke the silence. Her voice was small, almost apologetic, but I could hear the defensive edge underneath. Marcus, you've been so distant lately, so focused on work, I felt abandoned. Her words didn't reach me the way she wanted them to. Instead, they cut through me like a knife. Abandoned? She had the nerve to say I abandoned her. I abandoned you, I repeated, my voice dangerously low. My fists clenched at my sides as I leaned forward. I've been working my ass off, trying to provide for this family. And you... I shook my head, struggling to keep my voice steady. You couldn't even talk to me? You couldn't come to me when you felt lonely? You had to go to someone else? Clara opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't finished. The words came out in a rush now, as if they had been building up for months, maybe even years. I gave you everything, Clara. Every damn thing I had. My time, my work, my loyalty. And this is how you repay me? With him? The words sounded bitter as it left my mouth. I was there for you, always, and you couldn't even be honest with me. Her face flushed, and I saw something flicker behind her eyes, maybe a hint of guilt. But it was fleeting. She didn't take responsibility. Not really. I didn't mean for it to happen like this, she said, her voice trembling. But you were never home, Marcus. You were always gone. And when you were home, you weren't really there. She paused, her eyes meeting mine, and I could see the hurt in them. I needed more. I needed someone who saw me. I stared at her in disbelief, my heart thudding painfully in my chest. So you thought sleeping with another man would fix that? I asked, my voice shaking with anger. That would make you feel seen? I didn't know what else to do, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stood up, pushing the chair back with a harsh scrape against the floor. Don't try to justify it, Clara. Don't try to make it sound like it was some kind of mistake. I felt the weight of the betrayal crash over me again, like a ton of bricks. You made a choice. You chose him over me, over us. Clara's eyes softened for a second, and I saw the mask she had been wearing slip just slightly. I made a mistake, she said again, but there was no conviction in her voice. I never meant for it to go this far. Then why did you let it? I demanded, my voice hoarse. Why didn't you stop it, Clara? Why didn't you come to me? Her lips trembled as she fought to keep her composure. She was falling apart in front of me, but there was no satisfaction in it. No part of me could feel victorious over this. It wasn't about winning. It was about the fact that everything we had was slipping away, and I couldn't stop it. She looked down at the floor for a moment, her breath shaky. I was just so lonely, Marcus. I didn't know how to tell you. I thought maybe if I found someone else I could feel alive again. But I didn't want to hurt you. I swear I didn't. You hurt me, Clara, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You hurt me more than you'll ever know. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. She was still sitting there, trying to make sense of what had just happened, but I knew the truth now. She didn't regret it. She didn't regret what she had done, because she had already checked out long before any of this happened. The realization hit me like a slap to the face. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, was no longer the person sitting in front of me. She had become someone else, someone I didn't recognize. The drive home from the hospital was suffocating. The heavy silence between Clara and me seemed to stretch for miles. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles were white, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. It didn't feel like we were in the same car, let alone the same marriage. Liam had stabilized, but the weight of everything else was unbearable. The steady beeping of the machines in my mind drowned out the stillness in the car. The anger was still there, simmering just below the surface, but now it was joined by something else, a hollow ache that had settled in my chest. Clara sat beside me, her gaze fixed out the window, her face expressionless. I couldn't tell if she was deep in thought or if she was just checked out. I glanced at her, at the woman who was once my everything, and wondered how she could sit there so calmly when the world had just come crashing down. Clara, I said, my voice flat and emotionless. What happens now? What's next? She didn't turn to look at me, and her voice was distant when she finally responded. I don't know, Marcus. I don't know what you expect me to say. The words stung, not because of their harshness, but because of the complete lack of effort behind them. It was like she was already emotionally gone. You don't know? I echoed, my voice rising slightly despite myself. You're still not going to take responsibility for what you did, are you? I've said I made a mistake, she replied, her voice soft, but there was no weight behind it. No true apology. Just an echo of the words she had said earlier, hollow and meaningless. What more do you want me to say, Marcus? The bitterness in my chest flared up again, but I bit it back. You didn't just make a mistake, Clara. You betrayed me. You've been sleeping with someone else, and I'm supposed to just move on because you're sorry? How long have you been hiding this from me? Clara shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I'm not proud of what I did, she said, her voice distant. But I don't know what you want from me. You were never around. You didn't see me. You didn't care how I felt. I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, making the car jolt slightly. Don't you dare put this on me, I spat, my anger flooding back in waves. You knew how I felt. You knew I was doing everything for us, for this family. But I wasn't enough for you, was I? She turned to face me then, her eyes a mix of frustration and something I couldn't quite place. I didn't ask for this, Marcus. I didn't want this to happen. I wanted to feel alive again. I wanted to feel wanted. The words hit me harder than I expected. So, you thought he could give you that? You thought he could make you feel alive? Her eyes dropped to her lap. It's not about him. It's about me, Marcus. I needed something I wasn't getting from you. I gripped the wheel tighter, trying to hold myself together. And what was I supposed to do? You couldn't come to me? You couldn't talk to me about how you were feeling? You just went behind my back and betrayed me? I tried, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. I tried, but you were never there. Not really. Not for me. It was always about work, about everything else but me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit. Maybe there was some truth in what she said, but it didn't change the fact that she had made a choice. She had chosen him, chosen to betray me in a way that felt like a knife in my chest. I didn't know how to respond, so I said nothing. What was left to say? She was still justifying it. She wasn't sorry, not really, and she wasn't interested in fixing anything. Not now, not ever. The air between us felt thick with everything unsaid. I couldn't look at her anymore. I just couldn't. The drive home was the longest of my life. Neither of us spoke again as we pulled into the driveway. The silence was all-consuming. When I turned off the engine, it felt like I was closing the door on something I didn't want to acknowledge, but I knew I had to. I had to face the fact that the woman I thought I knew was gone, and the woman sitting beside me was a stranger, the woman I had been married to, the mother of my son. She was the one who walked away first. As I stepped out of the car, I glanced over at her. She was still sitting there, staring blankly ahead. I knew this wasn't over, but it might as well have been. The days that followed Liam's stabilization felt like I was walking through a fog. Every morning I woke up to the same sterile silence in the house, the kind that settled in after an argument you couldn't take back. Clara and I barely spoke. We moved through the house like strangers, speaking only when it was absolutely necessary. It was clear now that the woman I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone I couldn't even recognize. I kept telling myself I couldn't blame her completely. Maybe if I had been home more, maybe if I had paid more attention to her. But even as I told myself that, the betrayal kept flashing in front of me like a constant ugly reminder. Clara didn't even pretend to be sorry anymore. I saw her constantly on her phone, never when I was around, but I could feel the tension in the air. She'd hide it when I walked into a room, or answer quickly if I happened to glance her way, but I knew. I knew she was still talking to him, still keeping up the affair, like everything was normal. One night after dinner, I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes glued to her phone screen. It was like she was avoiding me on purpose. I stood in the doorway, watching her for a moment, and then I couldn't take it anymore. Are you still talking to him? I asked, my voice flat but demanding. The words tasted bitter in my mouth. I didn't even want to know the answer, but I had to ask. Clara didn't even flinch. She didn't look up from her phone. What does it matter, Marcus? It's over. My jaw clenched, and I stepped closer to her. Is it? Is it really over, or are you still hiding something from me? She finally glanced up, her eyes cold and distant. What do you want from me, Marcus? I told you. I made a mistake. She said the words like they meant nothing, as if we were talking about an overdue bill or a forgotten grocery list. A mistake, I repeated, the words coming out through gritted teeth. You've been talking to him for months. That's not a mistake, Clara. That's a choice. I didn't mean for it to happen, she snapped, sitting up straighter now, her fingers tightening around the phone. It wasn't like I planned it. You were never around. You were always at work, and I felt lonely, I finished for her, the word cutting through the room like glass. I know. You've told me that already. Clara's face twisted, frustration flaring in her eyes. It wasn't just about work, Marcus. I needed you. I needed you to see me, but you never did. All you cared about was the next deal, the next contract. I was just there. I stared at her, my heart sinking with each word. So, you thought this affair would make you feel better? That this would fix everything? You think this was the answer? She shook her head, but I could see the emptiness in her expression. She wasn't fighting me anymore. I don't know what I thought, Marcus. All I know is that it made me feel alive. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone cared. The words were like a slap. So, what's next? Are we just supposed to move on? Like everything's fine? Like I didn't just find out that you've been with someone else while I've been here, fighting for our family? I don't know, she muttered, rubbing her face with both hands. I don't know what you want me to say anymore. Tell me the truth, Clara, I said, my voice raw with hurt. How long has this been going on? And don't lie to me. She didn't even hesitate this time. Her voice was cold, like she had already made peace with it. A few months. It's been a few months. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. A few months? I repeated, unable to hide the disbelief. You've been seeing him for months. While I've been here, trying to make things work with you, for our family? She stood up abruptly, her eyes flashing with something I couldn't place. What do you want me to say, Marcus? That I'm sorry? I am sorry, but I can't undo what's been done. I can't change it. And maybe it's for the best. The words hung in the air, thick with finality. My heart dropped, the weight of what she had just said crushing me. She wasn't even sorry. Not really. She wasn't even trying to make things right. I could feel the anger welling up again, but this time, it wasn't just anger. It was an overwhelming sense of loss. I had been fighting for something that no longer existed. I wasn't fighting for a marriage anymore. I was fighting for a ghost. You don't regret it, do you? I asked, the question hanging between us, raw and cutting. Clara didn't answer right away. She just looked at me, her gaze flickering with something I couldn't decipher. No, she said, her voice cold and distant. I don't. It made me feel alive again. Something you couldn't give me anymore. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her understand the weight of what she was saying. But I didn't. I just stood there, watching as the last shred of my hope for our marriage slipped away. There was nothing left. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, was already gone, and she didn't care. The early morning light filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the room. I woke up with a heaviness in my chest, a certainty that settled deep in my bones. I had been awake for hours, my thoughts swirling around the same conclusion I had been avoiding for weeks. But now, there was no escaping it. Clara and I were over. Our marriage had crumbled long before I discovered her betrayal. But I had been clinging to the hope that we could fix it, that we could somehow go back to the way things used to be. But that hope was gone now. The woman I had loved was no longer there. She had checked out emotionally, and it was clear that I had been holding on to something that no longer existed. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hands trembling as I stared at the empty space beside me. Clara was still asleep, her back turned to me. I knew what I had to do, but the thought of saying it out loud, of finally ending everything, made my stomach turn. I stood up, walking to the window, my eyes scanning the quiet street outside. Everything felt distant now, like I was watching my life from the other side of a glass wall. I couldn't even remember the last time we had been truly happy, the last time we had laughed together or shared something real. The sound of Clara stirring behind me brought me back to the present. She sat up in bed, rubbing her eyes, but didn't say anything. The silence between us was thick, suffocating. She knew, as well as I did, that this moment was coming. I turned to face her, my heart pounding in my chest. Clara, I began, my voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk. She looked at me, her eyes vacant, as if she had already prepared herself for what was coming. About what? She asked, her voice cold, distant. "I can't do this anymore," I said, the words feeling like a weight lifted off my shoulders as I said them out loud. "I can't keep pretending like everything's okay when it's not." She stared at me for a long moment, her lips pressed together in a thin line. "What do you mean?" Her voice was almost bored, like she didn't really care, like it didn't matter. "I mean, we need to separate," I said firmly. "I can't stay in this marriage, Clara. It's over." The room seemed to freeze. For a moment, I thought she might say something, plead with me maybe, but she didn't. She just looked at me, her expression unreadable. "Okay," she said quietly, her voice flat. "If that's what you want." The words stung more than I expected. The lack of emotion in her voice, the complete indifference made my chest ache. She didn't even fight for us. She didn't even care enough to argue. It was like she had already let go, and I was just the last person to realize it. I turned away from her, grabbing a suitcase from the closet. The act of packing my things felt mechanical, almost surreal. I didn't even know what to take or what to leave behind. What was left for me here anyway? I packed a few clothes, my toiletries, nothing sentimental. My mind kept drifting back to Liam, to the quiet beeping of the machines in his hospital room. He was the only thing that mattered now. He was the only reason I was still here, still holding on to some semblance of purpose. I walked over to Liam's room, standing in the doorway and looking at him, sleeping peacefully, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. He was the only thing I still loved, with every ounce of my being. He was my anchor. I promised myself, right then and there, that I would always be there for him. No matter what happened with Clara, no matter how broken everything else was, I would always be his father. That was the one thing I could still hold on to. When I turned to leave the room, Clara was standing in the hallway, her arms crossed over her chest. She looked at me, her face soft, like she was trying to find something in me, but there was nothing left to find. "I don't want this," she said quietly, almost as if she was talking to herself. I stopped, my hand on the doorknob. "Neither do I," I whispered, my voice thick with pain. There was a long pause, and then she said something that caught me off guard. "I hope you find someone who makes you happy, Marcus." The words hung in the air, final and resigned. It was as if she was giving me permission to leave, to move on, to find someone else. But I wasn't sure I could ever love again. Not like this. Not after everything that had happened. I didn't respond. I didn't have anything left to say. I just nodded once, a silent agreement that it was time for both of us to let go. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out of the house, stepping into the cold morning air. The weight of everything that had happened over the past few days, hell, the past few years, pressed down on me. But there was a strange, faint hope beginning to stir inside me, too. It was over. And even though it hurt like hell, I knew it was the right thing. I was finally free. And maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to move forward. For Liam. For myself. As I closed the door behind me, I took one last look at the house. The place I had once thought would be home forever. But now, it was just another chapter of my past, closing for good. The road ahead would be hard. But I wasn't walking it alone.